കരുണതൻ നിറവോടെ ഞങ്ങൾ വരുന്നു കാരുണ്യത്തിൻ നിറകുടമായി. രാത്രി മുല്ലകൾ പൂത്ത സുഗന്ധം പോൽ നമുക്കൊന്നായി ചേർന്നിടാം, നമുക്കൊന്നായി ചേർന്നിടാം. കരുണതൻ നിറവോടെ ഞങ്ങൾ വരുന്നു കാരുണ്യത്തിൻ നിറകുടമായി. കനിവു നിറഞ്ഞാടും മാമലനാട്, സുന്ദര കലകൾ തന്നാട്. ജാതിമത ചിന്തകൾക്കപ്പുറം എന്നും മാനവനൊന്നായ നാട്. ഈ നാടിനുയിരായി നീങ്ങാം, ഒന്നിച്ചൊന്നായി നീങ്ങിടാം. ഈ നാടിനുയിരായി നീങ്ങാം, ഒന്നിച്ചൊന്നായി നീങ്ങിടാം. കരുണതൻ നിറവോടെ ഞങ്ങൾ വരുന്നു കാരുണ്യത്തിൻ നിറകുടമായി. കൂട്ടായ്മ നിറദീപമായെന്നും അണയാതെ കാത്തിടും നമ്മൾ. ഒരുപാട് ജന്മങ്ങൾ, ഒരുപാട് യാതനകൾ, അതിലെല്ലാം താങ്ങായി സ്വസ്തി. സ്വസ്തിതൻ കരങ്ങൾ തൻ സ്നേഹത്താൽ നീറുന്ന ജന്മത്തിനാശ്വാസമായി. സ്വസ്തിതൻ കരങ്ങൾ തൻ സ്നേഹത്താൽ നീറുന്ന ജന്മത്തിനാശ്വാസമായി. കരുണതൻ നിറവോടെ ഞങ്ങൾ വരുന്നു കാരുണ്യത്തിൻ നിറകുടമായി. രാത്രി മുല്ലകൾ പൂത്ത സുഗന്ധം പോൽ നമുക്കൊന്നായി ചേർന്നിടാം, നമുക്കൊന്നായി ചേർന്നിടാം. കരുണതൻ നിറവോടെ ഞങ്ങൾ വരുന്നു കാരുണ്യത്തിൻ നിറകുടമായി. ആ
Welcome back to yet another episode of Kerala Cancer Crusade and Cancer Literacy Mission, the webinar series under the auspices of IRIA National Preventive Radiology, in association with Susti Foundation, IRIA Kerala, and the Community Oncology Department of Regional Cancer Center to Trivandrum. So today we have an international perspective being shared by an international speaker from the University of Malaysia. Before going into our academic session, I have great pleasure to invite the President-elect of Indian Radiological and Imaging Association, Professor Dr. Umesh Krishnamurthy. Professor Dr. Umesh Krishnamurthy is the Professor of Radiology in Ramaya Medical College, Bangalore. He is a dynamic organizer and academician who has made significant contributions to the organization of Indian Radiological and Imaging Association. Without much ado, let me invite Professor Dr. Umesh Krishnamurthy, sir, to give the inaugural address. Over to you, sir.
Namaskar. Good evening, one and all. First of all, I would like to thank Rijo for doing an excellent job. And he, along with the Kerala chapter of IRIA, is doing an excellent job. In addition to the preventive radiology, the fetal medicine is doing a lot of work. So first of all, I would like to thank the Kerala chapter and Regio and other associations which are involved in this wonderful, knowledgeable, and which is useful for day-to-day life in a lot of people. So then I would also like to invite Professor Koan Hong for today's guest speaker, who's an emeritus professor, Department of Biomedical, Imaging University of Malaya. Welcome, sir. And definitely all our the delegates will benefit from your vast experience talk which you are going to deliver. And before I say anything, my president, Dr. Pushparaj Batela, is held up on a duty from IRIA side, which he is traveling in UP. So he is not able to make up for this today's function. So he has asked me to give his message that IRA is always for an academic association which is involved in academic activities. We have, in addition, we have an Indian College of Radiology which serves, delivers lectures or webinars throughout the year, which gives a lot of recent advances and the radiological information to our members. So Regio is in Kerala, a part of it, who is delivering fetal medicine, a lot of fetal medicine activities in throughout the country. And this preventive radiology is another aspect which he has taken up as a challenge and is doing a wonderful job. So he has done a lot of webinars. Continuously, I've been seeing elastography, oncology, and today he has fixed a lecture on recent updates. Today's topic is an update of breast imaging for diagnosis of breast disorders. So it's a very important where the Indian population are little hesitant in the initial stages. Now people are very cautious and they come for the checkups. So that is what Regio is trying to encourage them, and so that the people can come down and get their checkups done from our radiologist, who by such talks will be able to diagnose and guide them properly so that it will be helpful in their future. So from my side, from the IRA side, we are always for it. We welcome such talks, such people who are there to deliver to the society. And we once again thank Professor Kaung for having accepted this invitation. And on behalf of IRIA, ICRIA, and our whole radiology fraternity, I thank all of you for inviting me for this wonderful program. I wish you all the best, and I'm sure such programs are very much essential. I wish Regio, the Kerala chapter of IRIA, to further do such programs which will enhance our own radiology. I wish them all the success, all the best, Regio, all the best, Kon, and I hope this will enlighten all of us. Thank you. Jai Hind, Namaskar.
Riju, Doctor, unmute. Yeah.
Thank you, Dr. Umesh Krishnamurthy, sir, for the best wishes and the message. We will continue to do more activities under the banner of IRA and ICRA, and especially for this particular branch of radiology, that in preventive radiology, that it's a branch that involves high-risk stratification of the community with the help of imaging biomarkers, and especially today's topic is very, very relevant in that, especially in this month of October, where breast cancer awareness month. We are fortunate to have the talk from one of the pioneers in this field. Let me one of the pioneers in this field, Professor Ang Kuan Hung, the
One moment, I think some network issues. Dr. Rijo will be joining now.
Meantime, can I talk?
Yes, Dr. Umesh. Yes,
Yeah,
please.
see, this breast imaging, I just was talking to a patient, which I have done a FNSC for the breast lesion. More than the wife, the husband is so tensed up. So we need to give a session for the husbands that they should not feel tensed up, and he has not allowed me to get up from my table. Why you have not got the material? So these are some of the things which we need to tell the patients, attenders, the husbands, what is the how we have to prepare them. Otherwise, it's very difficult, sometimes. So I had to tell my gynecologist, the onco people, to talk to them. So there are certain issues which we need to uh, give the enlighten the attenders, which are very important. Okay, I think Riju has come back.
Yeah, sorry for this connection issue. So I'm back, and let me introduce our guest speaker who will be sharing with us the international perspective on the update on the diagnosis of breast cancer. Professor Eng Kwan Hoong is an emeritus professor of medical physics in the University of Malaya. His contributions to the field of medical physics and radiology, and especially in the field of breast cancer research, is phenomenal. He is a winner of the Mary Sklodowsky-Curie Award, one of the highest award for the medical physicists in the world. And he has been awarded by Malaysia the highest civilian award, that's the Merdeka Award. So we have with us one of the eminent personalities in the field of medical physics, and who has done a very deep research into the breast cancers, especially his work on mammography and the breast density and the recently published paper in Lancet, about which I'm sure Professor Eng Kwan Hoong will enlighten us. And his achievements in this field has prompted me to invite him for this particular lecture today. My association with him goes back with both of us being the members of the Quality Standards and Safety Committee of Asia-Oceanian Society of Radiology. Professor Eng Kwan Hoong is also the chair of Asia Safe, a wing of Asia-Oceanian Society of Radiology that focuses into radiation safety. It's a member of the International Atomic Energy Commission and has made significant contribution, especially after the event of Fukushima event in Japan, and his contributions after that has made as a member of the IAEA, International Atomic Energy Commission, has been phenomenal. So my interactions with him in the last 1.5 years have made me, I realized that he is a good mentor and a guide for me, and I always look up to him for guidance. With that introduction, let me invite Professor Eng Kwan Hoong to deliver his lecture on the update on diagnosis of breast cancer. Over to you, sir.
Thank you very much, Rijo, for your kind introduction. Namaste.
Yes, so I'm going to share the presentation that we have recorded. One moment.
Good evening, my dear colleagues in India. Greetings. First, I'd like to thank the organizers for inviting me to share this lecture with you. The IRIA Preventive Radiology, IRIA Kerala, Regional Cancer Center Kerala, Swasti Foundation and Community Oncology, the Kerala Cancer Crusade and Cancer Literacy Mission, as well as Genomat. Thank you very much for this invitation to speak to you on the update on breast imaging in the diagnosis of breast diseases. My name is Kwan Hong Ng. I am the Emeritus Professor at the Department of Biomedical Imaging, Faculty of Medicine, University of Malaya. And I'm a medical physicist with over 35 years of experience in both academic and clinical medical physics. I'd like to declare that I have no potential conflicts of interest to report with regards to this presentation.
A place where nobody dared to go. The love that we came to know, they call it Xanadu. And now, open your eyes and see what we have made is real. We are in Xanadu.
So Olivia.
It's breast cancer.
Oliver Newton-John, a great personality, the iconic singer and dancer, passed away August the 8th, 2022, a couple months ago, age 73. She said, I look my cancer journey as a gift. It made me slow down and realize the important things in life and taught me to not sweat the small stuff. Yeah, not to sweat the small stuff. Look at the more important things in our life. Such a positive attitude is such encouraging to us, especially the cancer survivors. And we pray for her and other breast cancer survivors and those who are diseased as well. First, let's look at the briefly from the global scan, the cancer incidence in 2020. Look at the pink sector, the breast in particular, occupies about 11.7% relative to other forms of cancer. And in terms of mortality rate, you look at the breast cancer, the pink sector, this indicates about 7% of the overall mortality rate. It is out of almost 10 million deaths dying from cancer in 2020. And this is a global picture showing the age standardized rate per 100,000 people. The highest one will be those in the Western European countries such as Belgium, some Netherlands, France, Italy, and of course the Australia, say like Australia, New Zealand, to make it. We compare to in Asia, for example, Malaysia is about 34.1 per 100,000. In India is about 25.8. This from Global Scan 2020. Now, though these two countries are relatively small compared to the Western European countries, nonetheless, it is important for us to understand and not to neglect the breast cancer. Early detection of breast cancer or any other forms of cancer is important. This is a very interesting slide done by Paris Force long ago, just showing you that when the beginning, it is non-palpable, is even invisible for any form of imaging. It is a very high probability of cure. And then as time goes by, it becomes denser to more cells grouped together, and is visible on the imaging, is even palpable. And then it begins to spread from non-invasive, localized, to invasive, spread to other parts of the body. So this indicates that early detection is very important, right? As early as possible, and the cure rate is very high indeed. Now, breast is an important organ or gland. The three important questions. So we want to know, where is the abnormality, where's the lesion, which part of the breast is located, and the nature, what's the size, right? What's the nature, benign or malignant? Whereas question to ask about is pathological nature as well, and what is its outlook, what's the prognosis, right? Could it be cured by chemotherapy, surgery, radiotherapy? Would it recur? Right? So now interesting look at the gross anatomy of the breast. Right? It is a relatively simple organ. The breast composition is important. Basically, it consists of the fibroglandular tissues, the ducts, lobules, and the connective tissue, the fibrous and the glandular, together with the adipose tissue, the fatty part of it. So when we say a dense breast, we refer to the higher proportion of the fibroglandular tissue in the entire breast. Okay? And if one has dense breast, means it has a higher risk of developing breast cancer. You find out more, so go along. So the ideal breast imaging modalities for the detection, the diagnosis of breast cancer, we want to have non-invasive, no need to poke needles, take it out. Want to close to 100% accurate diagnosis. We also want to predict the outcome of the therapy. We, as far as possible, don't want or minimum radiation. And so minimum discomfort to the women who come for the breast imaging. Right now, we have several breast imaging modalities or techniques. Mammography is the most common, it's a gold standard. It is X-ray based, and then with ultrasound. Then you have the magnetic resonance imaging, the MRI. And then you have the SPECT PET, these are the nuclear medicine or the radionuclide imaging. And then the new kid on the block will be the breast CT. Let's start with the mammography, which is common, and most women above age 50 or even younger would have experienced the mammography examination. Right? This is how it looks like. It's X-ray based. X-ray passes through the breast and form the image based on its attenuation through the various components of the breast. So it has been proven in many randomized trials to reduce mortality by 30% of the women aged 50 to 69 and up to 18% in women 40 to 50 years. And it is the method of choice in the current practice of diagnosing breast cancers in symptomatic women. Is considered as the gold standard in imaging. However, mammography is imperfect. The sensitivity of the mammography is pretty low is 48% in dense breast, compared to 98% in the fatty breast. Why? Because in the dense breast, the cancer lesions tend to be hidden amongst the fibroglandular parts of the breast. And this is called the masking risk. So the dense breast with mammogram is not easy. That's why you need to resort to other modalities such as ultrasound or MRI. It's interesting to note about the positioning, compression. This was in the early era of mammography. We didn't really have a dedicated mammography machine like we have today. And you can see the various stages of compression techniques, right? The one on the right, the red color, something like a balloon to compress, is very interesting, various technological evolution until today. Now, compression is important to form high quality image with contrast. However, it adds discomfort to women. So at the beginning of the mammography, you have compression, different, until even today, we still need, though with skillful radiographers, technologies, better machine design, it is much more tolerable. This appearance of the mammogram on the left, from the fatty to the one which is scattered, and then to the heterogeneous, to the one on the right, which is extremely dense breast. So as I mentioned before, that the dense breast, it is not easy to locate. The breast lesion is masked, it's all hidden in the denser part, the whitish part of the breast. And there are some innovations in the digital mammographies. You have the digital breast tomosynthesis, which is quite common today. You have the contrast enhanced digital mammography, and then you have the dual energy contrast enhanced digital subtraction mammography. Quite a mouthful. These are the recent innovation. And first look at the disadvantage of the mammography. The breast is three-dimensional, but what we see on the image is two-dimensional, and there's tissue being superimposed one another, and then the lesion could be hidden, right? It's all overlapping. That is a disadvantage. So could we view it in three-dimensional? So the tomosynthesis, tomo is a slice, that's like CT, yeah? Tomo. We want to slice across the breast, and then we can look at it side by side, and better still, we can reconstruct of different slice or section, right, to help us to visualize the breast in a much better way. So that is the tomosynthesis, where the X-ray tube move in an arc. In this case, it's 15 degrees, and then it'll be image constructions. In this example, 1 millimeter slices, and then we construct to two-dimensional like conventional, or you can do something called a three-dimensional view, or reconstruct to that of similar to the we call FFDM, the full field digital mammography combo mode. So that offers lots of opportunity to visualize the breast. So that is a beautiful technique. Look at the simulation, right? It's just showing slide by slide and reconstruct. You can visualize that nodule, right? Clearly you can see now, right? 3 nodule solution being shown. So it is a new way for visualization, though the principle of tomography has been known for many years. And some example, left is the 2D digital, the conventional mammography, and the right is the tomosynthesis slice. So improve visualization and help us to see through the dense tissue, so it can improve the detection rate. And this contrast enhanced, it is where we have introduced the contrast agent. And we see that on the left is the traditional conventional memo. On the right is subtracted image and enhanced. You can see the white arrow show the enhanced lesion, right? They're homogeneous in size, so there's an advantage of the contrast enhanced. And then the next innovation, we use dual energy to examine the breast, two different energy from the X-ray, and they also do a subtraction. So that again showing, for example, on the left is the conventional mammogram, suggested might be some speculated mass. On the right, using this two energy digital subtraction, and we see the enhanced, the speculated much more clearly than the traditional mammography. So those innovations help to ensure better detection, much more accurate diagnosis. Otherwise, you miss those lesions. And there's a paper we worked quite a while ago, the beginning of this digital tomosynthesis, a new future for breast imaging. I was working with the Australian group, and we published this at the early stage of the digital breast tomosynthesis, almost 10 years ago, publishing Clinical Radiology. And this is an example of we moved the mammography machine to the community, to the smaller towns and villages. Very early 60s in New York, in New South Wales, Australia, and even in Malaysia, we have, I'm sure in India too, you do have this memo in the truck, bring it to the people to promote screening or diagnosis. Now, we mentioned that it uses radiation dose, and radiation dose has its advantage and also the risk. So the risk of carcinogenesis from radiation dose delivered to the breast is of concern. So we need to monitor the dose, right? It's required to be done yearly by the physicists. For example, the MQSA from the United States, the Mammography Quality Standard Act requires that, and it's almost done in most countries as part of the quality assurance program. So they require a phantom, one shown here. This is called average granular dose or mean granular dose of 3 milligray per view, right, per exposure, for this a phantom to simulate a breast of 4.2 cm, 50% granular tissue, 50% adipose tissue. Okay? Now, if from the quality control, the average granular dose exceeds 3 milligray, then that mammography unit cannot be performed clinically. Right? You have to get it recalibrated or get the engineer to adjust it. Typically, it's between 1.5 to 2 milligray per view if the equipment is properly QC or calibrated. Now, let's look at the benefit and risks. Right? Now, if average granular dose is 3 milligray, this is on the high side, right? The increased breast cancer risk is 6 per million examined women. I mean, 6 out of 1 million gone for mammogram will develop breast cancer because of the exposure to radiation. Now, if we screen a million women, right, we expect to identify or to detect 3,000 cases of breast cancer. That's good. We identify them, but the breast cancer mortality assumed is about 50%. Then this screening exercise would reduce the mortality rate by about 40%. And that means we will save 600 lives out of a million women who's gone for screening. So that is the benefit of it, right? We need to balance this benefit and risk of it. And modern machines reduce those considerably. So the benefits of mammogram far outweigh the radiation risk. The next modality is ultrasound, which uses high frequency sound wave and is based on principle of the speed of sound in various tissue, normal and abnormal. Look at the returning echoes to determine its nature. It's useful because it doesn't use ionizing radiation, and particularly for women with dense breasts, it's problematic with the X-ray mammography, and that's where ultrasound is useful. It is an adjunct to mammography for biopsy guidance, for palpable mass evaluation, benign malignant nodules, and serial evaluation or for benign masses. These are the typical ultrasound appearance. On the left is malignant lesion, and the right is the benign lesion. So ultrasound has been around for quite a while. It's widely available, it's portable, relatively inexpensive, but depending on the skills of the operator. The next innovation, ultrasound elastography, based on the principle that if any pathological changes affect the tissue stiffness. Remember, in the old days, the grandparents could market and they buy fresh chicken, use hand to press against the meat, right, to determine how elastic it is. There's an idea, oh, that is still fresh, or that chicken is stale, right? So it's the same principle here. So it is a mechanical property of tissue where we use ultrasound to determine its response to that by after applying acoustic energy or external force. And essentially, we are measuring something called Young's modulus in vivo and in situ as well. This diagram just illustrates this ultrasound elastography. Broadly, they are in the two types, shear wave imaging and strain imaging. Let's begin with strain imaging. On the right, as I explained, you apply a pressure and look at its displacement or distortion. There's no absolute value to that. Okay, so this technique is not too popular. And the shear wave imaging, we are familiar, something called the fibroscan is for liver, right? Been used for quite a while. It's basically applying a mechanical impulse, right? This external vibrational sound wave, and you can determine the stiffness of the liver, right? And that has been useful for liver in particular. And then for the other type is called acoustic radiation force impulse, AFI. There are two types, a point shear wave, and the other one is the shear wave speed imaging, right? Which I'll explain more later. These are the currently available technique on elastography. So this is an example of the strain elastography. So the light just illustrate is a layer to simulate the tissue. It's gelatin. You apply an external pressure. You press on it like in a spoon. You see the changes in the shape. So the strain will be the change in the shape over its original shape, right? So you apply external pressure. Note this is qualitative only. It doesn't give any absolute value, as we don't know the amount of pressure we exert from the transducer. So these are the example of the appearance on ultrasound. So the other one is using this AFI, acoustic radiation force impulse. So we want to create a two-dimensional map of the stiffness. So we use a radiation force and impulse, right? From the focused ultrasound beam
and then you generate the shear wave, which is from the lesion, we travel transversely from the lesion, and then we use another sound wave to detect its speed. So in a way, we will measure the stiffness of the tissue. So if tissue is very stiff, it's not very elastic, it's very hard, and this is an indication of the malignancy. To this briefly, the physics principle. And this is the point shear wave. It's used for deep-seated organ, such as the example shows the liver. Right, the diagram on the left is illustrate. You have the normal grayscale ultrasound, and then you have the acoustic pulse, this AFI technique, send, and then you can have the ROI and shear waves being generated from the lesion, the ROI, and then it travels transversely. And then the transducer now another sound wave to detect or determine the speed of this shear wave being generated. From the speed, we are able to infer the stiffness of the lesion in the ROI. So it's measured in terms of kilopascal or meter per second. So this is the same principle as the two-dimensional note the point shear waves for deep-seated organ. So for breast, this is the two-dimensional shear wave elastography. Example is the non-suspicious breast lesion. Right? We saw a negative on mammogram. So what it does is they have this color map. It's like a heat map to indicate the degree of stiffness. Right? Besides, also give you the actual value. Right? From the blue, green is soft, then further up to orange, right, is stiff. Another example, right? So it detects at the center, the highlight in the ROI, this brownish. So this is a stiff part of the lesion. So the radiologist could investigate that further. Another new development is the automated breast ultrasound boost. The ultrasound is useful. The limitation is very much depending on the operator, the skills, experience, right? A little different precision, different way. You give you quite a different image and different interpretation, and reproducibility is really a big limitation. So they try to develop a method where you can scan the breast automatically, the whole breast, review 3D information, you can do multiplanar reformation without the user dependency. So here we have a boost from GE and a Kisson from Siemens. The Siemens called ABVS, automated breast volumetric scan. It's much the same principle. They have a high frequency ultrasound probe there, but it's a so-called large footprint transducer, fairly large, like a pencil box this way. It's similar size to the compression paddle in X-ray mammography, and then mounted on the mechanical arm. So you can see the picture where, right, it just put this particular plate onto the breast, and then the ultrasound transducer will do the scanning. And as an example, you can see on the left, right, the handheld transducer like the say linear probe compared to this the ABUS transducer, it is quite large and long, and this is the transducer in the ABUS will just scan across that breast from that plate itself. So this is called the large format transducer, which will, as you just scan along, it will acquire data. So in that way, it doesn't need the sonographer to hold transducer and press against the breast. And interesting, it reconstruct in various multiplanar reformatting. This example of breast cancer, a different view, coronal view A, sagittal and transverse, and you see that radiologists have to learn to interpret, start learning. It's different from the traditional or conventional ultrasound image or any others. Next, we look at the magnetic resonance imaging, MRI. It is quite a complex and time-consuming imaging tool. It doesn't use ionizing radiation. And this gives us a very basic concept of the MRI, where the idea is that the body consists of water molecules, and can imagine each one's like a tiny magnet, and you put the patient into a huge magnet, and those water molecules be aligned with the magnetic field, and then we'll send out a radio frequency pulse body, and it will disorientate the tiny magnets from the water molecules, is the protons there. And then we observe how we call it relaxation, and they give out a certain frequency, and then we detect this wave, the radio frequency receiver. So they have these various coils. You have body coils, breast coil, the extremities, and so on. And then this computer comes in to do the various image acquisition, reconstruction, and processing until we see the beautiful MR images. So this is a very basic concept of the magnetic resonance imaging. So it uses magnetic field and then technology for that. So it has been useful to assess the extent of the disease within the breast, particularly again with those dense breasts. It's much more sensitive screening tool, particularly those who have a higher breast cancer risk. A common technique we introduce a contrast intravenous gadolinium, and we can assess the permeability of the blood vessels supplying the tumor, the lesion. And when the tumor is undergoing what is the neoangiogenesis, the creation of many new blood vessels, so some might have leaking out, so we can detect from the enhancement from this uptake of the contrast. So this is a way how it helps to mean the staging of the tumor. Note that the breast imaging protocol is multi-parametric. So many imaging so-called sequences. You have T1, T2 weighted, dynamic contrast enhanced, diffusion weighted imaging, apparent diffusion coefficient, with various acronyms. So these are the standard one we use for breast MR imaging. So we look at its morphology, shape, size. I look for its characteristics. Also, the kinetic is uptake, the rate, uptake of the contrast media, and so on. And that's why you see this an example of standard MR breast protocol. You have so many types starting from the top, STIR, T2, WI, T1, T2, at different sequences, and that explains why MR examination takes a fairly long time. It's up to an hour or so. But it gives lots of useful information that otherwise cannot be obtained from other forms of modality. We can also do functional, spectroscopic measurements as well. The analysis of its content. So it is a sensitive screening, much more than the other techniques. Some examples to show is the various imaging features from a benign breast lesion. The arrow just point out to the suspected region, and this indicates the malignant breast lesion. And this example of a case from Prof. Malay Mutarak from Thailand. Right. The MR breast shows small enhancement mass. See the tiny arrow there, and the other arrow points to the answer axillary nodes. So it's very sensitive to pick up. This is from a 40-year-old patient. Right. You can see on the right, the tiny arrow, top one point out the mass, and the other one is the axillary nodes. The other modality is PET. These are radionuclide scintigraphy or nuclear medicine imaging. It uses radio label tracers, or we call it radiopharmaceutical, to detect metabolic activity of the breast tumor. And this is a functional imaging part of it. The traditional nuclear medicine imaging, a single photon emission tomography SPECT, right, uses a common radionuclide called technetium-99m. It gives out a gamma ray. So the patient is injected with this technetium-99m label with certain pharmaceutical product, and it will be uptake versus metabolism will increase its uptake into the lesion, and then it localizes and emits gamma ray. It's detected in the past is a gamma camera as a detector of the gamma ray, and that is rotates around the patient. It's like a CT. So it really gives us useful information. Advanced to PET, positron emission tomography, is very common, right? PET in oncological imaging. And here we, instead of technetium-99m, we use a positron emitter. This is fluorine-18. We give a positron, and it is labeled with it's called FDG, fluorodeoxyglucose. Essentially, it's a radioactive sugar, isn't it? Right, glucose, but in this case, labeled with the F18. So that is essential glucose, for metabolism. Right? So the tumor will have much higher uptake of this foreign 18, the FDG. So we have this PET scanner to detect. And what happened is this positron will annihilate when encounter the electron, right? And then it gives out two gamma rays or back to back, and we detect these two gamma ray, then we can trace back where is the origin of this F18 FDG. So that is briefly the principle of the PET. It turns out to be very, very useful in oncological imaging in particular. Right. That example, again, this from Professor Mutarak, right? Apparently from the mammogram, it indicate is negative, right? And even ultrasound. But look at the bottom right. This is technician system B. Right? That is the one from SPECT imaging. On the C on the bottom, and the right hand side is right lateral. Just some slight in uptake of that, okay? Whereas the left is not. And this is when it was XI issue, there is a cancer there, okay? Where the mammogram ultrasound missed that. So you can see the complementary role of this different forms of breast imaging modality. Now this is the PET, the F18 FDG. Can show this one. Pretty young woman with left breast cancer. On the arrow, they show the cancer there, right? So now what happened? It is on the right is a CT, on the left is it's called PET CT, and you fuse when you combine the CT will give you the anatomical information very well, and combined with PET is function. So you have both anatomical and physiological, the functional part of it. So that and the bottom show this is the MR of the breast, showing the lesion before the operation. So just briefly illustrate the complementary role of various imaging modality. Now, what is new? There are quite a number of them, but one that is very promising, which has really obtained FDA approval, already started in a couple of sites. Breast CT. Big problem of mammogram is uncomfortable compression, right? And it's 2D from a 3D object. So the breast CT, no compression, can get 3D information. And it's really fast. Like currently, the technology is about 7 seconds. The dose has been a concern, but well, they claimed comparable with the mammography. It started quite a while ago. UC Davis in California have been grouped by Boone. They're doing this one. It's relatively simple technique. The woman lies prone, the breast suspended by gravity, and then below the couch is this like cone beam CT, just scan around it. It's a CT technology been known and commercialized. The first one's Corning, right? They have been able to get the FDA approval and started a few sites. You can see the instrument on the left, and on the right you see it show various view transverse, sagittal, coronal, 3D. It is the no compression, and you see the breast is its natural state, and you have the capability of various 3D reconstruction. And with contrast, you can also look at the blood vessels and lots of opportunities. And further, people are talking experiment with combining the SPAT, PAT, and CT. Right? It's called hybrid, so-called 3-in-1 others. So we get to see how this technology will develop further. So finally, I like to show the comparison of this mammography, ultrasound, PET, and MR. You can look at this table. They have advantages, disadvantage. I point out to you the sensitivity and specificity of these modalities. For mammo, if less than 40-year-old, is lower sensitivity because of the denser breast of it. Ultrasound is pretty high. There's advantage of it. PET as well, and MI is very high, but we can't use it for every woman. It's just too time consuming, too expensive, and pretty long waiting time, as well as scanning time. How about specificity? Mammogram is good, it's high, specificity. Dural, which is negative. Right? Ultrasound just moderate. PET also moderate. MI has been pretty low, but slightly improved to moderate. Now we can see why we need different imaging modalities to complement one another. Right? No single tool is perfect, and this is, we wish to have an ideal one. Comparison of various radiation dose. Film screen mammography in the old days is film the average granular dose. Or the mean granular dose, right? This is important indicator of the risk of developing breast cancer, about 2 to 3 milligray. And then the full field digital mammography, FFDM, and the digital breast tomosynthesis, right? It's slightly less, right? 1.4 for FFDM and about 1.9 for DBT. This has been the average figures from some over review meta-analysis paper. And breast CT is very new. Book is still progress, right? It's been claimed it's comparable with the digital mammogram. So we'll see how forthcoming papers review the dose. But this is the modality to look out for breast CT. How about breast PET CT? PET imaging is between 5 to 7 millisievert. They express it in terms of the effective dose. So that gives you a reasonable good comparison of that. I just want to show that my group work with group in Singapore and India. We have published quite a while ago a diagnostic and therapeutic application of breast imaging. We all are moving towards personalized medicine, right? We're interested in prediction, outcome, right? And prevention, diagnosis, therapy, prognosis have been the mainstay for a couple of years, right? And monitoring as well. So prediction is something, lots of research initiative into that. We are interested to look at the risk factor, right? And there are several factors: personal family history, reproductive factors, lifestyle, environmental. Just trying to highlight the one from the personal and family history, genetic predisposition, family history, and breast density. I particularly have been, my research interest and my expertise has been ways to estimate breast density as accurate as possible and how it can relate to the breast cancer risk. And it has been known those women with dense breasts will have 4 to 6 times higher risk of developing breast cancer, right? Only age and BRCA1 and BRCA2 mutation will increase the risk further. It's been problematic to extract this information from mammogram. It is 2D, it doesn't represent the volume of the dense, which is the volume of the fibrogranular component of the breast. Right? That is an issue. So we are working I've been promoting this volumetric breast density, which is the volume of the dense tissue over the volume of the whole breast. Right? And there are various software now, like Wopara example, estimate the actual volume and work out the volumetric breast density from the digital mammogram. And this enables to compare from various studies, different centers. About 10 years ago, together with Prof. Aisha and Prof. Yip, these are two top breast surgeons, published a paper in Lancet Oncology about standardization of clinical breast density measurement. So we promoting, advocating, have a standard way of measurement so that we can compare, so that the epidemiology data will be much more accurate and meaningful. And so I was invited, published an article on Vision 2020, mammographic breast density and its clinical application. This is interesting, sort of invited to show where are we heading the next 20 years or so on this breast density, how it can be applied clinically. And this paper is authored together with my former PhD Susan, Dr. Susie Lau. So that is a milestone paper, so to speak. So we continue to search for various ideal breast imaging modality using from X-ray mammogram to ultrasound, elastography, SPECT, PET, MRI, and now is the breast CT. So we have various modalities. So we are still searching for an ideal, better one, less radiation, much more accurate diagnosis. So let us keep abreast with breast health. This is a message I like to leave with you for this Pink October. Thank you very much for listening.
Thank you. Thank you, Professor Ang Kwan Hong, for that wonderful lecture, a comprehensive assessment about and an update on the diagnosis of breast imaging and the modalities used for that. Of course, the breast CT is a promising modality without compression. One of the major complaints of patients who undergo X-ray mammography is that compression is painful. And breast CT, if it is, and I really understood that the radiation dose of breast CT is comparable with that of X-ray mammography in the studies that have already come out. In that case, can we assume that breast CT is the future?
Yes, I hope so. Some of the early work by the group in California, Professor John Boone's group, is promising. I understand there are a few sites in US and in China, and they started operating clinically. Isn't it such unit in India now?
I'm not aware of it, sir. I'm not aware of it. See, let me ask you one question, because X-ray mammography is not very widely available in India, especially in tier 2 cities and below that. But ultrasound is, even the high frequency ultrasound. And there has been a suggestion to widely use ultrasound, high frequency ultrasound, to at least pick up some masses and lumps, especially after the self breast examination or clinician breast examination. So is it such a policy, is it applicable in a country like India, where we have got a huge population and the X-ray mammography is not as widely available as in the West? What is your take on it, sir?
Yeah, there have been several big studies on to propose the use of ultrasound as a screening tool for a large population and without access to X-ray mammography. It's quite good results. It is really up to, it's a perception to me, because it's so ingrained with us that, oh, X-ray mammography is a gold standard, we must have that. So it will take quite a while to change the perception of the radiologists or the referring clinicians, surgeons, that ultrasound, it may not be as good as X-ray mammography, but it is close enough if well-trained ultrasonographer, radiologist, and it's an excellent screening tool. It will save a lot of life. So it's worthwhile. I'm sure you have a data and you generate and convince the policymakers will be very good.
Right. So, and again, as you rightly said, the sensitivity of a X-ray mammography is only 48%, especially with a dense breast, unless the problems that you have already highlighted in your research, the evaluation of the dense breast with especially what is the role of artificial intelligence that in evaluate X-ray mammography, especially the dense breast for
a lot of this imaging, we generate a lot of data, right? Mammography, ultrasound, and radiologists just skim away, right, and make a diagnosis quickly as possible. But there are a lot more information that we can. That is where artificial intelligence comes in. We can look at the various features, all the different views, different studies, and combining. For example, the patient might have done mammography, ultrasound, or MR. So combining this will give a much more accurate diagnosis. And more importantly, I mentioned that towards the end is a prediction, predict the outcome, right? How the disease will progress, right? And also various aspects that we never thought of. So that is definitely very promising. We see lots of papers, and it'd be good that those listening out there next week, my colleague, I work with her, Wong, will talk about artificial intelligence. So join us again next week.
Yes. So that is another interesting perspective that will be shared next week. And a colleague of Professor Ang from University of Malaya will be talking to us on the role of artificial intelligence in the prediction of in breast cancers. So one more question, and finally, Dr. Jayakrishnan, any of the audience who wishes to ask a question to Professor Ang Kwan Hyung can either put it in the chat box or raise their hand so that our Soumya can give the opportunity to ask their question directly to Professor.
Good evening, Professor. I'm Jayakrishnan. I'm from Kerala, the southernmost state of India. So, would like to know more about screening mammography, and is there any specific guidelines to do screening mammography? And another question is that is there any international guidelines for mammography? Because different associations give different guidelines. So is there any uniform guidelines for taking mammogram?
Now, from the unfortunately, the question is no. There's no international. Different country, different policies. For example, the starting age of screen, whether it's 45 or 50, it varies. Right? In Australia, for example, versus US and UK, Europe, they're all different. That is the problem. A lot of this is based on epidemiological study, right? The large-scale epidemiological data will indicate, for example, USA, we changed several times, 50 to 45, 40 some. It sort of swing, and after a few years to swing back. It's quite interesting. But if you talk about the technique itself, right? The positioning, how it's done, image quality, yes, there is international standardization agreement, right? The IRIA, ICRP, WHO, all these have image quality criteria. It was started from MQSA in the US, this Mammography Quality Act. That is good. It is fairly international. For example, use of the phantom check image quality that is used by most countries in the world, and that is a good thing about that. From the technique point of view, image quality, radiation dose, there is this 3 milligray, which is quite fairly internationalized, right? Because effort by the IAEA or all those. But as far as screening technique when and how, and also another problem with that amongst the surgeons, right? Of course, they need to come in. They also have different views on that. I've been to a couple of meetings. Quite interestingly, the radiologists, the surgeons, and the epidemiologists, they all have quite different approaches, different view about this screening business. So this is the state of affairs now. It's quite non-standardized, and different one do different way. How about India?
Hello.
Is any screening policy or?
Yeah, Joe, please.
Jayakishan?
Yeah, Joe, please answer, please.
Yeah, right. See, the national policy, the government policies are not there, but the BC, the Breast Imaging Society of India, has come out with guidelines, and that is what is being followed.
Oh, good.
So this one of the focus of preventive radiology as well as the Kerala Cancer Crusade is to detect breast cancers or all relevant most common cancers at a very early stage. Because in Kerala, the detection of breast cancers at stage 1 and stage 2 is only 30%. Still, the cancers are detected at stage 3 and stage 4. So it is high time for us to have a mandatory role of screening or some kind of risk assessment or high risk group stratification. That is one of the aims of Kerala Cancer Crusade and the Cancer Literacy Mission. And one of the major challenges that we have come across is it's not that these modalities are not accessible to them. It is some kind of awareness, lack of awareness to seek for the facilities. And again, one more thing that I've noticed is the focused approach for cancer detection or the non-NCD risk factor assessment or the risk stratification is not there amongst the various specialties of doctors itself. Maybe many times I've seen stage 3 or stage 4 CA breast, they must be telling, I've seen a general physician, I've seen a GP, I've seen a gynecologist, I told them, but it was not properly investigated. So there needs to be some kind of an awareness, some kind of guidelines, some kind of training programs for all sections of doctors. Not that everyone will be seeking an oncologist or an oncosurgeon for in the first step as a primary consultation. So this is what we have realized, and this is one of the aims of Kerala Cancer Crusade, to promote screening strategies. And one of the achievements of Kerala government is they've developed a Shaili app with the help of ASHA workers. They're collecting data from all of the population, and almost half of the population is now covered, and they're getting data on the high risk groups that needs to be concentrated, needs to be focused. But again, when we know about a high risk group, we need to offer them a basic screening protocol. So again, do you recommend to go for mammography screening in all these patients of high risk group? Because that is going to be a huge number.
Yeah, actually, I was involved in some debate on this screening. It's a very complicated matter. It's a lot depend on your resources, whether you're sufficient trained radiographers, radiologists to interpret, right, and equipment. And also, and I think the surgeons be concerned if you pick up so many of those who need surgical intervention. So do you have enough surgeons, right? That is some of the, I often hear this being debated when I attend radiology conference. It's quite interesting. And in fact, what you mentioned, Dr. Rejo, is well said. It's important to bring the different specialties together, the OBGYN, surgeons, onco, the GPs, because they are not too familiar with imaging techniques. In fact, my talk tonight is actually targeted toward them. Not radiologists, you all will know all about imaging. Right? So it is really for them to understand what different imaging modalities can offer, particularly respective sensitivity and specificity. Right? So they kept up to date what is available. So it is meant for the purpose. It's good that he can have I used the word summit before, for the radiologists to initiate, to bring different specialists together, have a common platform, common approach, and that will definitely will bring up a much more successful cancer campaign or your crusade.
Thank you, Professor Eng Kwan Hoong, for that
Just one
wonderful.
more question.
Yes, Jaykrishnan, please.
Can I have? Sir, I would like to know about one thing. That is, what about the I mean, how mammogram is effective for aggressive tumors? For example, if there are certain cancers which will grow slow, indolent tumors are there, some will be more aggressive. So, I mean, how far it will be useful for screening as far as aggressive tumors are concerned?
I can't answer the question, it's clinical question, or I'm not radiologist, but I did mention in ultrasound part, some of those, you need serial the follow-up. So to avoid too much exposure radiation, ultrasound is preferable. Maybe Dr. Rijo, you can answer the question from the clinical point of view.
Yeah, I think we have to use ultrasound and guided procedure, ultrasound guided procedures to assess that risk. Once it is identified as a low risk or a low growing this thing, then again following it up with very serial with ultrasound or guided procedures will be the ideal way to manage it.
Okay, close.
So I think we have now running out of time, and this has been a very good session. Professor Eng Kwan Hoong, thank you from the core of my heart for joining us. I know the difference in time zone, it is almost time to go to bed, and still you are with us here, and thank you once again for joining us, and we would like to have you with us for more sessions. And your research on the cutting edge research on the dense breast and the breast density and the recently published papers, I'm sure is going to benefit the further the practitioners in a big way. Thank you very much, Dr. Jaykrishnan, for joining us, and all the attendees. I wish to thank all of you once again, and on next day, on 20th, that is Thursday, we will be having another session on the role of multidisciplinary teams in cancer screening, and which will be inaugurated by Dr. Padma Shri Dr. Harsh Mahajan, the founder of Mahajan Imaging and the president of Nat Health. And in that particular session, we will have 4 young doctors who will be joining us, 2 of them from All India Institute of Medical Sciences, Jodhpur, Dr. Rengarajan and Dr. Ananya, and another a PhD holder in artificial intelligence, and he's a engineer from IIT Madras. So this is an era of multidisciplinary teams in cancer screening. So we would like to hear from different perspectives, from multiple specialties, multiple disciplines. Not only from medicine, it is a medico-engineering nexus, medico-engineering group that has to focus on early detection of cancers. So I would like to invite all of you to join for our next lecture, next webinar at 8 p.m. in India Standard Time on 20th of October, that is Thursday. So please mark the date, and till we see on 20th, thank you for joining again, and good night. Thank you.
Good night.
Thank you.
Thank you, Soumya.
Thank you.